Alrighty, we are back for Roundtable Dolphins episode number 27. We are gonna keep rolling on this training camp roster breakdown. Yeah, before we get into that, please, everybody, as I've been starting every episode lately, do us a favor. If you like what you hear, like, share, subscribe, do all the social media things. It really helps us out. And again, if you're a hate watcher, that's totally fine too. We will accept your watches as well. Also in the description of this video will be the official Roundtable Dolphins website. You can go there, create an account, interact and comment and like all of our articles, analysis, breakdowns, and whatnot. This podcast lives on YouTube, but it also lives there as well. Yeah, all that good stuff. Jumping right into it, we're going to talk about the tight end room, which is a little barren, if you will. The Dolphins have one holdover in the form of Greg Dulcich, who came into the team in 2025 and was added to the active roster, I believe, in October. He played in 10 games, started showing flashes of brilliance, and was generally a pretty good tight end when all things are said and done. He had 335 yards and 1 touchdown, which doesn't seem like a whole lot, but in 10 games, that's not bad for a tight end. He was awarded a 1-year deal up to $3.25 million, and he is now going to be the leader in the room there. Then we got Will Kazmarek, who was drafted in the 3rd round out of Ohio State, and he is the consensus, or was the consensus top blocking tight end coming out of college, which is cool. That's what the Dolphins need, especially for the run game. Great. And then I hope I am saying his name right. Seydou Traore is one of the international pathway players. He was drafted in the 5th round. He picked up 1,482 yards and 10 touchdowns in his collegiate career. The other veteran is Ben Sims. He was with the Green Bay Packers previously. Obviously, it makes sense why he was signed, as he was part of that Packers organization that we brought over. So as everyone's been calling it, we are the Green Bay South, if you will. That is what the Dolphins have been called. And then also there is Cole Turner, who was with the Washington Commanders and Tennessee Titans before signing a future reserves contract with the Dolphins. Yeah, so Greg Dulcich is, or has been, the favorite target for Malik Willis. We did talk about that previously when we were breaking down the quarterbacks, in the sense that when you have an inexperienced quarterback, they lean heavily on the tight end room, especially their main tight end, because tight ends are usually good over the middle for those kind of dink and dunk passes. Especially if they're good with the yards after the catch, you definitely want to be leaning on them. The hope for the Dolphins is that the offense does not sputter in a way that only Greg Dulcich is going to be the pass catcher, but it's good to have a young and dynamic tight end there leading the room. I'm not so sure about the rest of the room. It is jam-packed full of young players and reclamation projects, as is most of the roster. Yeah, but I mean, Greg Dulcich, great hair, great mustache. Hopefully he's going to be a great player. I don't know.
Is that the prerequisite now? You must have good hair, good mustache to be.
If you're a tight end and you have good hair and a good mustache, you're going to be an all-pro. Let's just say that.
Hey,
you heard it here now.
Look.
Yeah, George Kittle falls under that, so.
Done. Boom. See? Point proof.
The stats lie, you know.
Point proof.
Maybe we'll have to do the official research on that one and see how accurate that is.
I don't know how true or not true that is, but whatever.
I would like us to do a deep dive. I think that's important journalism, right?
That
doesn't hurt.
That would be interesting. Sure. Ranking all of the great hair, great mustache tight ends in the NFL. All right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, outside of that, I think, it's exciting for him getting to step up to the plate, be a leader in that room. He's 26 years old now. He's been around the NFL for a while, so I think he'll enjoy that, and maybe that will give him the push that he needs this season to kind of go that extra mile and really be that guy for Malik Willis, lock in with him, want to elevate him, make him look good too. So that extra responsibility can sometimes just be enough of a driving factor. But I really would like to see these rookies get, their turn in the sun, because they really prioritized that this draft. They took 2 tight ends, and they clearly see a future for them. And I think that what we've seen, just this offseason, building around that offensive line and kind of adding to that already, talented group of people, it's really going to be something that they're focusing on this season. So, and again with Ben Sims, it's very clear why he's in the building, and I like that. I like them picking up guys that they trust. That's clearly to them a guy that's a hard worker is going to come in, get the job done. In which capacity, how often he'll be used, I'm not really sure, but I guess we'll see throughout training camp just where they're going to go with that.
Yeah, Greg Dulcich, UCLA product, did really good as a Bruin. Kind of struggled to find his footing in the NFL, but I think, I mean, if there's a season where he could potentially break out, it's certainly this one. James, like you mentioned, has been targeting Greg. Obviously a tight end is always the security blanket. I'm looking to see whether if that could be, if that could be the case throughout the entire season. He will certainly have the opportunities for it. I mean, although, Greg, he has like this, he has a pathway right now to really pan out a really good season for himself. He doesn't need to be, like great George Kittle or Travis Kelce. He just needs to be, reliable. He needs to be sustainable. He needs to be healthy. He needs to just do his job, especially with a guy like Willis throwing him the ball. We all know what he's coming into, right? I mean, it's going to be the first time starting in his career. The hope is that, he does well and he plays an entire 17 games. Health is on his side and whatnot, but certainly this tight end room will be heavily relied on. And also too, that kid from Ohio State, right? They brought him in because they also too, it's kind of translating to the offensive line, right? The type of play style they want to play. This kid Will out of Ohio State, he certainly complements that really well. So it's going to be really interesting to see, are they going to start off maybe with like 11 personnel first and just focus on Dulcich? Are they going to do maybe 12 personnel once kind of Will, gets under his feet and once he gets more kind of acclimated in the offense, right? It's going to be really interesting to see there. I'm also just seeing like if like could Dulcich, be like eventually like a true tight end one. We all know how the wide receiver room is looking right now. There's a lot of question marks there. So I mean, could he be like maybe like a wide receiver one in a way, right? I mean, that's going to be really really interesting to tell.
I'll say it again. Someone has to be.
I mean,
someone has to be.
Ideally, you don't want that unless you got a George Kittle on your George Kittle or Travis Kelce on your hands. In which case, like even then,
or Mark Andrews,
or Mark Andrews. Yeah, that's right.
Sure.
Hey, his touchdown stats.
Longevity wise,
I'm talking about. Okay, let's just look. Travis Kelce was a wide receiver one. Let's just throw that out there. Okay, George Kittle, Mark Andrews, somewhat. I'm just saying. You don't want that to be the case for the Dolphins because then, you become one-dimensional and you need those other players to step up. But Ben Sims did have one of the best catches in minicamp and OTA, so that's good there because he could be a sleeper pick. He could be a sleeper tight end that comes out of nowhere and, is able to – because also he came from the Packers, so we could presume that he had a lot more work with Malik Willis because he was probably lower on that depth chart for the Packers. There you go. The connection's still there. The chemistry's still there. So, hopefully maybe that all amounts to something, but they brought in tight ends for obviously pass catching purposes, but even more so because the run game, as we've said, is going to be pretty dominant. So you need blocking tight ends, period. That's why they went out and got Will Kazmarek. He's going to be that guy. And all of them, that's as a tight end, you have to do, you're called upon to do blocking assignments a lot of times anyway. So, it's going to be really interesting to see in what manner Greg Dulcich is used, if he's going to be more of a pass catching tight end as opposed to being a blocker. They have those blocking tight ends that can also play that fullback position, alongside Devon Achane. And that's it. The run game, which again, I know that we've said that obviously you don't want the run game to also only be the thing, but as Billy has mentioned time and time again, that wide receiver room is looking real rough. So something must be done, and if that's Greg Dulcich and then blocking for Devon Achane, who can also catch and run, then it is what it is. That's what they're dealing with.
We've also seen teams over the last couple seasons kind of really use their tight ends for those like 4th and 1 moments. just those guys who can get over the edge because they're just that much bigger and that much stronger. So like they may be cooking up stuff like that because teams are starting to have to do that nowadays. Like people go in for 4th and 1 more than often 4th and 2 even, they're going for it frequently. So like it's something that these teams have to be thinking about, and maybe that is what the Dolphins are thinking about.
Yeah, and then also having like every team's doing their like bastardized version of the tush push. So there's also that
Yep.
when it comes to the tight end room. So
Exactly.
no, that you're right, and it's crazy. Like especially in 2025, the amount of times that coaches were going for 4th and 1, even 4th and 5. I was like, what is happening? But that's a good point. Yeah, I mean, you need to have those big bodies in the middle that can just shove the quarterback or take it themselves, jump over the top, whatever the case may be. But yeah, you can't do any of that without our next topic, which is a strong offensive line. And I will start this by saying I'm impressed by what the Dolphins have done so far with the offensive line. Will it work out? I don't know. But I'm impressed with what they've done to try to upgrade that unit in a big way. They already have players on that roster that are established and arguably the best or some of the best at their positions. Left tackle, you got Patrick Paul, who's on the rise. Right there, left guard is going to be rookie Caden Proctor. You got Aaron Brewer, who just got his new extension, who arguably could have won Protector of the Year in 2025, and he was the top-rated center on Pro Football Focus. Then you got right guard Jonah Savanea. I know I'm not saying his last name right. It was said on Drive Time, but I don't really know how to say it just yet. I am sorry, Jonah. If you listen to this, I will get it right. I promise. And then right tackle Austin Jackson is right there as well. So just going with the starters. Actually, let me back up a little bit and just kind of go over the depth a little bit. We got Andrew Meyer, Jim Boniface, Josh Preeb, DJ Campbell, Charlie Heck, Gottlieb Yedzi, and Carter Warren is still on the roster, but I thought he was going to be let go due to his injury on the injury settlement, but I guess that's not the case. Then you have, excuse me, as my voice does some weird thing. 1 second. I got to go through the undrafted guys, right? Andrew Meyer, we got Jamari Sawyer, who actually, Jamari Sawyer comes from, I believe, the Chargers, and he could be a guy to watch for a starting position. He could push some people. I think I said DJ Campbell. We have Kevin Klein, Marquez Cox, and James Esther. Whole lot of guys depth-wise, a whole lot of backups there, but let's just jump right into the starters here. Now, my main biggest concern is if Austin Jackson is not healthy, this entire thing goes in the toilet really, really quickly. Austin Jackson has played a total of 14 games over the last 2 years, and that is not something you want from a starter. He was given, the team basically gave him a shakedown to give him a lower 1-year deal, but in his looking at his time on the field, it's understandable why they would do that. He's still relatively young. I think he's 29 years old. And he's been in the league, I think 6 years. No, he's 8 or 9. My bad. I don't recall. Anyway, so Austin Jackson, he's your right tackle. They moved Jonah over to the right guard. That's where he played in college because he was the worst rated guard in 2025 on the left-hand side. They moved him to the right. He is now going to be there where he is more comfortable, where he played mostly in college. And then you have a big body in Caden Proctor on the left guard position there. He's 6'6" or 7, I think it is, 352 pounds. He's huge. He's going to be oversized guard. He's going to train across the line, which is always good for any rookie, no matter what, because then you can kind of move them around. But yeah, I mean, it gives the left side of the line a lot of balance because you have two bullies potentially in Patrick Paul and Caden Proctor there. And then you got Aaron Brewer, who is, again, one of the best at his position. He is a monster of a center. He can move the pile. He finishes his blocking assignments. The dude can run downfield like crazy. You've seen him chase people down. I don't know how at that size, but he has, and he does. But if I see it as this, if Austin Jackson is hurt or cannot play or whatever, they're going to have to put Caden Proctor over to the right tackle position. Then they got to move Jonah back to the left guard, presumably, unless they're like, no, screw that. We're not going to do that. That's how I see it going down. But again, it really just depends on Austin Jackson remaining healthy. He needs to be healthy. That's to me is the Achilles heel of the offensive line is whether or not Austin Jackson can actually stay on the field.
Was it Austin Jackson you said was 29?
I think
he's actually turning 27.
27. There you go. So
you aged him up massively.
My bad. So that's why I was like, he's young. Yeah. So 27. He's been in the
young.
league. He's been in the league 6 or 7 years, right? That's
since
what it was.
2020.
He's young.
He's a young, fresh talent, so it shouldn't really be that he's getting injured this regularly and this frequently. So I think that that might, in a way, that gives these other guys a chance to work hard, because if that is the case and he's not ready to go, or he does mess up again and injure himself, then someone has to come up behind him. I agree with you. It's not looking good out there if he does, but I think that the talent they have up front, if they stay healthy, is pretty great. I mean, it's so important nowadays, and especially for this run game, this run fest offense that they're going to go with this year. I think that is all I want for them, is for these guys to stay healthy, because beyond that, I don't know. What do you think about Salia maybe switching over to right tackle if Austin Jackson goes down?
That could be the case. That could really, honestly, like, I really think if Austin Jackson falters, I think that's actually going to be the case. And I think that
Yeah.
I think he has the best shot at pushing anybody off that line, because that's why they brought him in. He's a proven veteran, and I think he's going to be a sneaky guy to watch. Even like it could be with the Rams, or Warren McClendon kind of stepped in and then he took the role, and that was it. It was his role. So I think that could be the case for Sawyer. And I think that's why he's here, is as that extra added insurance in case Austin Jackson is not healthy and they don't have to then mess up the rest of the construction of that line. Because right now, just like you said, right now, the way it is right now, it could be a very good line.
It could. The only issue is his Salia is also questionable. So
Yeah.
his own injury issues, if the two of them end up going down, then it's really, that's where you're kind of scraping the line. And honestly, once one side collapses, the other side just has to collapse alongside of it, because you're doubling in work. You're giving the guard an extra job to do that he just can't do, and the center has to focus down. So, I think that they could do with maybe assessing what they've got throughout training camp, and just thinking about, is there someone else out there that we might need to just bring it over
That's
on a 1 year vet deal.
That's been my opinion. I think they're gonna have to do that at some point. But also too, Charlie Heck, who is a longtime veteran, is another player that is that added insurance. He appeared in 17 games. He only had 6 starts, but still, he's kind of that like really strong veteran depth piece that could push for a starting position.
Yeah, like down to the wire, step up and
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Two things I'm looking at for the offensive line. One, can they establish a new identity? Short answer, I believe they can. In due time, they will. It's going to be very different from what we saw with Mike McDaniel. There was a lot of quick throws with Tua. That's not going to be the case anymore. Malik Willis is a very different quarterback. Can they be more physical? Can they be more balanced? I think that's going to be the test early on. I think eventually, like I said, he'll get there. How long will it take? I'm not really sure. Also, too, can this offensive line really maximize Malik Willis, right? I mean, this is a guy who loves to run around, is very good at doing so, right? Kind of creating his own magic in a way. And this offensive line has to really block differently than how they did with Tua. Everything's new here, right? So, I mean, those are really the things I'm looking at. It's going to be really interesting to see, right, how the line is, and also too, like I talked about, James, one more time, how do you say his last name? Ohio State tight end that they drafted.
Sadie Traore.
No, sorry, the Ohio State kid that they drafted in the third round.
Will Kazmarek, sorry.
Kazmarek, right? Like I said, I think he's gonna. It's okay. I think. Thank you for that. I think he's gonna play a really big role in that too, because, like you said, he was one of the best blocking tight ends in Ohio State, in the country. Now he goes with Miami. A perfect blend of what they want to do there. I just look at that. Yeah, because obviously, if the line is protecting Malik Willis, if they're allowing him to do his thing, to create even 1 or 2 more seconds, I think that could be all the difference in the world between, being probably not a really good team to maybe being competitive and giving teams a run for their money.
Yeah.
Maybe this is the identity that they're going to establish. It's just a hard line that you just can't penetrate, and that run game just keeps on going. They keep talking about this identity that they're going to form, and we say they're going to find it in training camp, maybe throughout the season, whatever. But maybe that is what they're leaning on.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because Jonah was on Drive Time, the Dolphins podcast, and talking exactly about that. We've been talking about that for weeks and months at this point. Like, what is this identity that the Dolphins are going to have under Jeff Hafley? He says he's going to wait till training camp. They don't really know, but it's slowly starting to eke out. And obviously, this is going to be and this is going to be an obvious statement. This is going to be cliche to say, but it's physicality and toughness. And that's something that the Dolphins have not been attached to for multiple seasons under Mike McDaniel. Whether or not people believe that they were, which I believe that they were, they just got this bad rep of being soft or not being physical or whatever the case may be. So now he said, when Travis Wingfield, the host, was talking about that, and he's like, "Yeah, you want to talk about identity?" He's like, you guys can be bullying on the line and the run game." And Jonah was like, "That's it. That's our identity. That's what we want it to be." And I think that's very important. And again, I know I keep harping on they don't want the run game to be the only thing, but the Dolphins proved in 2025 that they can run the ball down a lot of people's throats, including the Buffalo Bills, which they did. And so if that's the case, that's the case. And you accomplish that by having a very tough offensive line that can't be broken. But you're right, buddy. This is a completely different line for two reasons. One, Cole Strange and Larry Borum are no longer on the team. So you have a completely different right side of the line. And two, you have an influx of new younger talent that you can then mold, especially in with Caden Proctor. Caden Proctor was drafted number 12 overall, and the expectation is he's going to be that day one starter that they need to push the pile and open those run lanes for Devon HM, but at the same time give Malik Willis the time to plant his feet and throw the ball downfield, which he can do with ease. You're right, he's not Tua Tagovailoa. Tua had struggles with the deep ball. He had to throw the ball over the middle really quick, get it out of their hands. They had to basically not be able to. I would say the offensive line didn't even have the time to set their feet, to allow anything else to happen. It was just like, all right, stop the initial barrage of defenders so Tua can throw the ball. And when Tua was one of the fastest releases in the NFL, which was great when you had two of the best receivers, but when Tyreek Hill went down, that doesn't matter. That doesn't count for anything. So the offensive line now can, or rather has to, be bullying and protect Malik Willis to allow him to throw the ball downfield, in which case then you have to have some wide receivers that can get open and cause separation. Do the Dolphins have that? Don't know, but we'll find out. The bottom line is this offensive line is built to be big and physical, which is exactly what John Eric Sullivan and Jeff Hafley said that they wanted. They got it. There's some huge human beings on this line, and they did, to their credit, really do a good job towards the back half of the 2025 season, but now it's different. You can't bank on that, regardless if you have Aaron Brewer, Patrick Paul, and Jonah as the returning veterans, and Austin Jackson, but he didn't really play. You need to see how the line comes together with Caden Proctor, who's still a rookie, by the way. I mean, you can't expect that he's just going to come out guns blazing and be the best thing ever.
Oh,
you
can you?
I mean, you can.
I mean, you can. I mean, that's why they drafted him in the first round. Yeah, James, like you said, like with Tua, they needed something different. That's why those two speedy receivers in Waddle and Hill worked so well. When yeah, sure, it didn't like translate to the ultimate success, but at the same time, there was some success there. Now you don't have that. You have a questionable wide receiver room. How are things going to play out there? Like we talked about last week, that's the biggest question mark. And then you have the tight ends that we talked about just a couple minutes ago. How are they going to play out? What type of role are they gonna have? And obviously the protection of Malik Willis, the health of Malik Willis, that's vital, and that also coincides with the offensive line. How are they going to protect him? What type of schemes are going to what type of schemes are they going to do and whatnot? How is Devon Achane going to be incorporated in that in terms of like the blocking as well? Like there's a lot of things here that I'm really looking forward to see once training camp gets rolling around.
Yeah, the trenches are important. We all know this. Everybody knows this. I mean, there's been a change in the NFL over the last like 5 to 10 years, where if you do not have a good line on either side of the ball, you're not doing much of anything to anybody, period. Because with an offensive line, a strong offensive line, there's so many quarterbacks in the league now that can just hurl the ball downfield like crazy, and you need to battle those guys. In the AFC, you got your Patrick Mahomes, your Josh Allen, your Lamar Jacksons. In the NFC, you got Matthew Stafford, you got Brock Purdy to a degree. You got Jalen Hurts, you got Jordan Love, you got guys who just can throw the ball every which way. So you need to try to protect them so they can do that. Then on the defensive line, you need the guys that can get in there and stop those guys from doing that. So it's a you have to have good lines. And speaking of which, we're going to jump right into the defensive line here. Again, you got some big worries there. I think the biggest for me remains the pass rush. You lose Bradley Chubb. That's a big time player. You got Chop Robinson. You got Josh Uche, and yeah, you got David Ajobo, Robert Beal. You got Kenneth Grant and Zach Sealer, who are, in my opinion, the most important there on the line, and Jordan Phillips and Zeke Biggers. Jordan Phillips and Zeke Biggers, we talked about them way back when I think OTAs began. Both of them slimmed down quite a bit so they can be more mobile, so they can be more effective. Keith Cooper Jr., you got Matthew Butler, Alex Huntley, Khalil Saunders, Cameron Good, and Seth Coleman are the other depth pieces there. Defensive line wise, not talking about the pass rush defensive ends, just the defensive line. It's pretty strong. Kenneth Grant has been on the rise there. He should experience another good year. Zach Sealer is a consummate pro. I feel like he's like a Calais Campbell. Like you can just count on that guy to do his job every single time. And the hope there is that the pass rush is going to be enough because we've seen when the Dolphins don't have an effective pass rush and everybody just passes all day on them, especially because when we get into the secondary next week, there's some more concerns there. I think the deepest concern is in the secondary, more so than the wide receiver room. But if you have a secondary that's not really doing its job, you really definitely need a strong pass rush, which right now I do not know if the Dolphins have fully.
Yeah, I think that that's fair to say. I think, like you said, I think that the additions that they have made are worth seeing out. And I'm not just putting on my Ravens fan hat here, but David Ajabo never really had a chance to shine on the Ravens. He was injured. And then there's just so many stars on that defense that he didn't have a chance to break out. And like we've said repeatedly, for every position in the Dolphins locker room, there's room to compete. There's room to show what you can do. And just because Josh Uche and Zach Sealer have come in, they're definitely going to be the guys that they kind of like lean on. And Chop Robinson, obviously, we've heard Hafley speak about how he's excited about him, and the defensive coordinator say that they're excited about what he has to offer. But I think that there's going to be room for these guys beneath them to kind of come up behind them and just show off as much as possible. I don't think it's like a locker room full of stars in the way that like a lot of defenses are. But something we haven't spoken about much on the podcast is how they're not the only team in their division going through an identity shift. The Buffalo Bills, who have been the dominant team for the most part, are also experiencing a massive, like losing Sean McDermott is huge. Like that's a big deal. And I think that you have the opportunity to show up and out against them each week. And I think that this defense is really going to cut their teeth against Josh Allen, because that's the team that's kind of shifting its identity alongside with them. Because like most of the Bills haven't had the purge the same way the Dolphins have, they're still going to have to find a new identity under their new leadership. And so I think that there's room for them to be, and the Jets are not competitive and they have to play these teams 2 times a year. The only team I think they're going to struggle really massively against is the Patriots, and that's to be expected. So I think there's room for this defense to show what they can do. That's 6 games a year that you've got to kind of show up and out. And if you can win those 6 games and just a few more, like playoffs aren't that far away. Not this year.
They're at 4.5 games right now. That's their win total. So it's you run the gamut on your own division. That's a pretty big positive, especially because then if you start putting it together the following year, you got your division's number. It's pretty good.
That's sometimes all you have to do. Just just really crack the division. People forget about how important those games are, because that's 6 of your games in a year.
Yeah.
And that's a big portion. Win 4 more. We've seen teams go to the playoffs with 10-6. That happens. People won the Super Bowl with 10-6 seasons. So it's not an unachievable goal for them. I just think that this defense is really going to have to, because it's going to rely on them. I think that the Miami Dolphins are not going to have issue putting up points this season. I don't think that's going to be a problem for them. And all the defense really have to do is their job. Stop them from scoring points. And that's easier said than done, of course. But like these guys, they have enough talent. They can do it, I think.
Yeah.
Back to your point real quick, before you jump in here, buddy, is I think again, like what we've been saying, anybody at this point could jump up, but I think I think a lot of people discredited Chop Robinson from 2024 to 2025 because he was like nominated for defensive rookie of the year, and then he just fell down and just didn't get the starting job. He wasn't a starter on for most of the season in 2025, which that was the old regime. So
Yep.
now you have all these guys that are buying into what Chop Robertson could be, and it could be what he was before. Maybe he could be a double-digit sack guy in 2026. We don't know. But then, like you said, David Ojabo, like you're right, he did not get that chance as a Baltimore Ravens. And so now, fresh scenery, fresh an ability to really get out there and see what you can do. That's everybody but Zach Sealer, on that line, because you got Kenneth Grant, but behind him is Zeke Biggers and Jordan Phillips, both of whom are trying to also chase their own starting position and can push everybody else to be better because they're trying to aim for that starting position and not be rotational players. So yeah, anybody at this point, that should be their identity. Anybody at this point.
And sometimes that competitive fire is just all that it takes. It's just that like opportunity, because you see the guys ahead of you and like, oh, well, no one's going to put me in over Tyreek Hill. No one's going to put me over Jalen Waddle. Like, so they don't need to kind of live up to that. But this year, like, there is room to be the guy on the line. So I don't see why they won't compete and why they won't really go for it this training camp.
Yeah. No, yeah, there is room for guys to step up and show out. And I think they have the right personnel with it. Jeff Hafley, obviously a defensive-minded head coach. I think, like a player that I'm looking at who I think could take the next rise, they drafted him to take the next rise, although they was with the older regime, is Chop Robinson. Hasn't got a fair shake so far. Jeff Hafley's giving him every opportunity to, be the player that they hope that he can be. He was fantastic at Penn State, comes into the NFL, has some rocky 2 years, and now he enters his third year, arguably a crucial one at the end of this year. Of the 2026 season, he's going to be eligible for an extension, right? Are the Dolphins going to be willing to give him that? That all depends on how he performs in 2026. Like I said, Hafley's giving him every opportunity to do so. 2025 was a tough year for him, James. Like you said, he didn't start, hardly played and whatnot, kind of had trouble to find his footing. It was just a weird year for him, and then now he's given every opportunity in 2026. Like you said, can he be a double-digit sack leader? I mean, that's what I'm looking at. I mean, he's a first-round talent. I mean, can he do that? Can he lead the pass rush? Can he develop into a cornerstone on the defense? I mean, what was it? John Eric Sullivan said that he believes that Jacob Rodriguez could be the leader of the defense one day. I mean, I hope by at least like the middle of the season he could be like, well, maybe that's Chop Robinson now. Right? I mean, he's still really, really young. Age is on his side. Time is on his side. So that's a guy I'm looking at in the pass rush sense. And this is a guy who I think still has some potential, but this is the year to prove it. If he can, that would be great news for the Dolphins. If not, they're just going to have to move on and find someone else.
Yeah, no, definitely. And again, I mean, I think we're going to keep saying this, for until training camp starts, until the regular season starts. It could literally be anybody on this team. And I think that's, as much as it's scary for a team, because like you literally have a room full of, non-proven veterans and inexperienced rookies, but then you have that influx of pure competition where everybody's trying to battle it out to get that starting position, because that's good no matter who you are at whatever position you are at. So you're going to be clawing and working your butt off more than the guy next to you because you want that position. So I think that's what's going to drive this team forward, and I think that's what's going to create that physicality and that toughness that the Dolphins have needed. And from what we've seen from Jeff Hafley and John Eric Sullivan, they're both no-nonsense guys. It's like, look, you either show up and do your job or we'll find someone that does. And so, yeah, I mean, there's some deep questions there. The pass rush is not like the top of my list in terms of concerns by any means, but like I said, next week we're going to get into the cornerback room, and I have a whole hell of a lot to say about that, as I have for the past few weeks, and I'm going to continue because I'm just very, very scared, and I'm very upset that the Dolphins didn't even offer Rasul Douglas a contract, and now he's with the Washington Commanders. I think that's going to be a really, really poor misstep on their end, but as Billy brought up earlier, there could be more offensive linemen coming in. There could be more defensive linemen coming in. There could be more cornerbacks coming in. They have the cap space to get that done, and training camp will show those ugly, glaring holes very quickly.
Yep. Real quick with these guys, I think, because if you get in and you see that they're not competing and then not going and then not really pushing themselves, like that's not a guy you want on your team when the plane is wide open like that. These guys will get cut really quick if they don't. So
Yep.
we'll definitely see very quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure one of the first questions that Halfley's gonna be asked once things start get rolling is, well, what's the identity now?
Yeah.
He could kind of answer that now, right? Maybe not on the first day,
Yeah.
but eventually.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and you know, that's it right there. Like that's gonna be again. I think that's gonna be the identity. Like either do your job or sit down. Like you know. But this has been Roundtable Dolphins episode number 27. Thank you guys so much again for listening. Please do all the social media things as I mentioned at the top of the podcast. It really helps us out. We will be back next week again to talk more defense, to finish out our training camp breakdown, and then we'll be there for training camp. Training camp is here, people, and then we're only about a month and a half until the regular season starts. We're almost back to football fully. So
I think it's literally a month until the first preseason game, which is crazy.
there you go.
Early
And
August.
then
Early
shortly after that, I think the first week of September is when week 1 is. Like
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
September like 10th or
A little bit
something.
little bit after Labor Day. So yeah, less than 2 months.
yeah, we have like
It's really here.
it's almost here, people. But yeah, thank you guys so much for listening.